Let's begin by talking specifically about navigating in the 3D viewport before we jump in and look at the user interface as a whole. So the first time we start up Maya, we're presented with these two little windows here. And this is, again, Maya 2015. So the first little window is going to let us know that any features that are new in this particular version of Maya are going to be highlighted with these little green brackets. So we're going to be going through this training assuming that this is your first time working with Maya, but if you've used a previous version of Maya and you open up your new version, this can be a quick way to see something that is new in this particular version. So this window is just kind of letting us know that. We can turn those green highlights off if we want to by clicking this little check, and we can also just turn this window off, so keep it from showing up when we start up Maya. So I'm going to leave the green highlights on, but I'm going to uncheck this little show this at startup. So next time we open up Maya, this particular window won't come up, but we'll still get the green highlights for anything new inside of Maya. So as we go through this process, we'll be able to see what is exactly what's a new feature and what's not. So say okay to that. This is just a kind of a mini startup movies, little tips that can get you going. I'm going to turn this off as well. We'll be going through all of this throughout this course. And so this is what we're going to be looking at right here. This is our 3D view. Here is our 3D grid. And this is where we're going to be creating all of our geometry, putting all of our scenes together. Now right now there's a gradient. You can see kind of a blue gradient from top to bottom. There are a couple of ways that we can kind of change this. And I like to turn it off just because it's a little bit clearer in the videos what's going on if we have kind of a plain gray. And so hotkey to change this is actually Alt-B. You can see I can cycle through black, back to this gray, or this lighter gray, which is where I'll leave it. Now we'll talk about in the next lesson more of this interface, but you can also change the background gradient. You can turn it off by going to Window, Settings, Preferences, and going into the Preferences. This is where we're going to be able to set all of those preferences for our Maya scene here. So we've got the background gradient turned off. Let's add some simple geometry just so we have something in here. I'm going to go up to the polygons shelf, which we'll talk about in the next lesson, the shelf here, and I'm just going to click on this sphere. It's going to give me an indicator that I need to drag on the grid, so I'll do just that. And now we have a sphere that we can sort of move around. I'll click off of the sphere into this dead space. Now, to be able to move around within Maya, we're going to be using the Alt key. So if I hold down Alt, and with the left mouse button, rotate around, I can orbit around the geometry. So up and down, you can see I'm going above and below, or if I drag left and right, I can orbit around the model. The relationship between the model and the grid and the coordinate system is not changing. We are just orbiting ourselves around it. Okay. If I use the Alt key and the middle mouse button, I can track across the scene, so I can move around that way. Again, the geometry is not moving relative to the grid. If I hit Alt and right mouse button, I can move in and out towards the geometry or the origin or away. So again, Alt's going to be the key for that. Alt, left mouse button to orbit, middle mouse to move around, right mouse to move in and out. You can also use the left and middle mouse buttons together to do the same function as the right mouse button. Now let's say that we have moved all the way out and now we want to kind of zoom in or frame a particular object within our view. So instead of kind of manually coming in here and doing that, we can select the object just by clicking on it. You can see it turns green there. And we can hit the F key. F is in Fred. And you can see frames up on this image, on this model rather. Now if we had multiple objects in here, we could hit A to frame everything. Okay, so frame all. Now we have right now one particular view that we're working with. This is called the perspective view. You can see this PERSP right down here, letting us know what view this is. Just means that we can kind of move around. It's being shown in perspective. If we want to see different views, we can hit the space bar, and that'll take us to our 4 views here. You can see basically this viewport has been duplicated 3 times and put in a 2x2 grid, but the views are different. So this is the top view, so we're looking at the geometry from the top without any perspective. This is from the front, and this is from the side. And you can see the axis difference here. So in this case, this is the positive X, so you can relate that to this direction. in the perspective view. Same thing here. This is the top, so this, what we're looking at is the z-axis, or the blue axis, and then the red is this way. So you'll always be able to kind of orient yourself based on the axis here in the corner or on your object to let you know, kind of which way things are facing. Red is X, blue is Z, Y, green is Y, okay, which is up, kind of up and down. And again, in here, we could move in and out, move around. We can't orbit in these orthographic views, okay, because they don't have the perspective. It's not like a real 3D view. We're just looking at it. We're kind of locked to a particular angle. To get back to our main view or to any of these views, we can click on them, and you can see I don't even have to really select the viewport. I can just hover over it, hit the space bar, and it'll maximize that view back into the main view. Now, in addition to all of the menu items that we'll be talking about, here in our viewport, we can also access something called the hotbox. So I'm just hitting the space bar over here. It's dead space, and it can bring this up. And this is basically just kind of a floating menu. And then we can come in here, we can select. So if I click on Maya, I can select different views. I can change this view if I want to the right-hand view, or come back and change it to perspective view. So the hotbox is just a way of kind of consolidating a lot of the different functions of our interface into something where we can just kind of click on something really quickly from wherever it is that we're working. So, instead of working down here and then having to go up, click something up in here, I can hold the space bar down, and I've got a lot of those tools and functions down where I need them. That's the hotbox. It can be accessed using the space bar. All right. One other thing I did want to mention, in 2015, it's actually touch is enabled for this version of Maya. So if you have a touch device that's touch enabled, you can actually navigate around in your 3D view using gestures with your touch device. I tried it with an Intuos 5 and it worked just fine. And so you might check that out if you've got a device like that. But that's kind of a cool feature new in this version of Maya. So now that we're kind of able to get around in our viewport with the Alt button and our mouse buttons, the next thing we'll do is talk a little bit more about the interface as a whole. So just kind of talk about what the different sections are, what they represent, what kind of tools are located in those, and what they can do for us as we work in Maya. So let's do that in the next lesson.